Mr. Speaker, I think the problem in government side of the house is that they didn't understand that the pressures that comes from the pressure that tells you to spread positive vibes in society is a norm. For the simplification purpose, I'm going to call it the norms. And I'm going to explain how norm works inside the society, how they interact with other norms, and how they work in a specific context. Because it's really sad that opening government and closing government make a gross generalizations on how the norm works. Because it's not realistic when someone just passes away and then your friends are going to your home saying, oh, you should be happy, you should spread positive vibes. That's not realistic. Because that's not one, the norms to spread positive vibes being heavily emphasized. Other norms are in place, it's called sympathy. And we think that it is important for you to recognize how this norm works inside the society, how they interact within each other, and how they play in a specific context, specific time frames. That's where the closing up sessions are going to come in this debate. Basically, I think closing government's argument are talking about evaluations, how you being able to understand your issues when you're being slapped with the truth. Yeah, basically the same with opening government. I'm going to integrate it to my arguments, right? So let's understand first how we're emphasizing this norm is important. And I'm going to give you examples and explain how norm works within society. There are two main characterizations how norm works. One is that norm intersects and interact with each other. For examples, norms that encourage you to be kind to other individuals also interact with the norms that tells you to prioritize your own community. That's why you have things like zakat. There are two different norms that interact with each other, right? But on the second characterization, what's also important is that norms operate in a specific context and it's not constant. For example, the norms that shame you when you badmouth people who just recently passed away, maybe it applies after the people pass away. You cannot talk about bad things that have done in real life. But after 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, these norms being normalized, you can talk about all the things that had happened, that this person had contributed to other individuals, for example. It's because norms evade and it allows and it changes over time along with the progress on societies and how we people think about how we should approach certain situations. And the norms that we're talking about, the norms that overemphasize the pressure to spread positive vibes, apply in a specific context and a time frame. It's not in the context where you're experiencing sadness, like what opening government said. It's not in the context in the instances when you are being in a grief, because people tolerate griefs. People tolerate individuals who is currently facing sadness. These norms that we're talking about are replaced by the norms called sympathy. That's why generally people tolerate when you want to be alone. You want to be alone during your sad time. That's why people tolerate when you want to go to the bar, for example, to drink because you're stressful of your work. People tolerate this, and people do not force you to spread positive vibes. So it's not true that what opening government and closing government would like to say, that the norm applies in a constant way and it happens in universals. But even if it's true, no thank you, even if it's true that it applies in that instances, I'm not sure why excessive negative emotion like opening government and closing government would like to have would help you to actually understand your issues. It's lucky for Rizqi that he's able to understand their issues. But for a lot of people turn into alcoholisms, people turn into radicalisms when they are in the deep emotions, deep negative emotion, when they are sad, when they are grieved. So I don't think they can heavily generalize that people's reaction will be good in times when they have no access to positive emotions on their side of the house. No, thank you. So what is the next question that we need to answer in closing opposition? It's the big question. When then this norm applies, right? There are two specific contexts through which the norm to spread positive vibes to society applies. One is it's a context in which people are experiencing general happiness, right? When people are happy, you just won a championship, you just won a debate tournament, just got into your favorite university, for example, there is a pressure for you to be able to spread happiness to other individuals. These norms happen in instances in form of social pressure to spread positive vibes. We think that this specific context and this specific time frame is important for us to maintain. Why? Because it is important to make sure that people are aware that happiness is accessible, right? It is important in the world in which we live in, where we experience a lot of sadness, when there are a lot of disasters, when you're disappointed with government, people are questioning whether happiness are accessible. So it's not really like what opening government, inclusive government would like to say, that people are having an easy access to happiness. People are questioning whether they do have access to happiness when you're constantly being told by your boss that you're not good enough. I think it is important for you to understand that given the fact that happiness are multi-interpretative, positive vibes and emotions are also multi-interpretative, I think this pressure leads to a more picturizations, more illustrations on how happiness is inside the society. You may want to post that you got accepted into your favorite companies and you call it happiness, but at the same time you also can post in the social media that you meet your family, you go dinner with your grandparents, for example, and you call it happiness. The natures of the happiness that is multi-interpretative allows more awareness and more exposures to individuals to have access to happiness, to think that my happiness was not singular. I can have access to happiness from a lot of things. There are religions, there are families, there are jobs that can give me access to happiness. And we think that it is important when people generally face happiness, they spread it in the society. But before that, yeah.
People will be positive during positive events regardless, right? But notice that because there's an overemphasis of this norm over any other norm like sympathy, when you go to a funeral, you are expected to help say to this person, process this faster, be happier faster, right?
Okay. That's not true. Because without the overemphasis, if you're happy and you try to spread the positivity inside your timeline, you'll be seen as someone who is bragging, flaunting your happiness. Oh, I get accepted. Okay, that's good for you. That's Ria, by the way, in Islam. And I don't think this, I mean, that's the truth. Like, you got bitter. So we need this overemphasis so that people spread positive vibes on that side of the house. But most importantly is this is directly engaged with opening government and opening oppositions. The norms operate in the most maximum way in the context when people are able to overcome the barriers, overcome the struggles that they face. So when you're able, for example, black people, Barack Obama has been able to overcome the barriers to become the first black president inside the United States, the norm applies. There is pressure for Barack Obama to spread the positive story on how he overcome all of these struggles and how he achieved his positions right now. So true, people experience sadness, people experience grief, but people don't know how to process that emotions. People don't know how to react to that situations. When this positive vibe that was being spread by people who have been able to overcome those barriers to make sure that people have guidance in their life. We open the closing option key.